Well, it was yet another very, very highly emotional day at the North Gauteng High Court yesterday as the Oscar Pistorius murder trial continued with Gerrie Nel's relentless cross-examination of Oscar Pistorius. And a primary theme of the day yesterday was being that Oscar's alleged tailoring of his evidence to suit his version of events. But with Nel putting it to Pistorius that this version was so improbable that it had to be false, even going as far as to call Oscar a liar in court. And Pistorius clearly could not take it anymore. Take a look at this.
You see, Mr. Pistorius, you now have to give a lot of answers. And you know why, Mr. Pistorius? It's because you know exactly. You fired at Riva. These other versions of yours cannot work.
True,
you fired at her. You did. Why are you getting emotional now?
I did not fire at Riva.
Lady, the witness is emotional. May we take adjournment again?
A question that was asked numerous times by Advocate Gerrie Nel: why are you getting so emotional? So perhaps to explain this with us in studio to unpack some of the psychology behind that emotion is Megan de Beyer. Great to have you back with us again. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's take a look at exactly, possibly how one goes about unpacking this emotional side of Oscar that we're seeing a lot of crying at certain points in the trial. Some people say it's a ploy, some people say he's under duress and therefore he can't handle it all. Psychologically, how do you make sense of it?
You know, the first thing I need to say that from a human point of view, and psychology is trying to explain the motivations behind our human actions.
Yes.
So we're looking for an explanation. We're not looking for opportunity to kind of let him off the hook, so to speak. He needs to be responsible for his behavior, but the emotional aspect of his behavior, I would say first and foremost, it's pretty normal in the sense that he's under huge duress in that court case. He has the entire world's eyes upon him.
Yeah.
I don't think that any of us sitting here could have any idea of the tension that goes on, having to stand up facing the mother of the women you've just killed, being grilled by an unbelievable prosecutor in Gerrie Nel in terms of his very piercing questions. So the emotions, first and foremost, I think he needs to have been emotional in that circumstance.
Yeah.
However, this continuous display of emotion, a lot of people and a lot of psychologists around the world are saying, is this narcissistic behavior?
Yes.
Is it still congruent with narcissistic behavior? And certainly there's no doubt that there are strong traits of narcissistic behavior in his personality. It's coming through constantly about in his life, this need for admiration, this need for him to place himself first above others, the lack of empathy that he often shows, the digs he's taken, at sometimes other people winning against himself. But the crying and the upset, one would expect a truly narcissistic personality to break at some point and attack Gerrie Nel or attack someone in the courtroom, because narcissistic personality cannot contain the rage they have inside themselves, which defends, and that rage defends the hopelessness and helplessness and worthlessness that he feels inside.
Yeah. Now, you and I spoke about the importance of having a father in a boy's life as a relationship builder and building the person that they are. Now, we know that Oscar's father was periodically absent from his life along with his siblings. Do you think that might have had an impact on, the man that he is today and the way that he's reacting to certain situations?
The first thing I need to say is I have never seen Oscar and interviewed him and been in his presence. So I'm going on what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, what I'm watching as a psychologist. So we can only speculate and say that when we look at other boys who have had no father figures in their life, certainly cases of inadequacy, feeling that they have to prove themselves in the world, needing to be driven to show that they're somebody because the lack of the father figure has added to a sense of worthlessness or inadequacy in themselves. That's often the case with boys without fathers.
Yeah.
But if you look at Oscar's father, I mean, he seems to be quite ruthless. He's apologized for his very tough behavior on Oscar. At some point, there was a letter written to Oscar from the father apologizing for his kind of really tough approach to his upbringing. And it seems like the family was intent on Oscar thinking that he was normal. So his feelings of inadequacy and worthlessness were never expressed in his family. They were never contained. They were never held. So here was a boy growing up knowing he was not normal, but being told he's normal. Having feelings of inadequacy and differentness and not being able to cope often. I mean, we saw him in the courtroom on his stumps. Suddenly, it was a very different human being we were looking at. We could see that this man must feel terribly inadequate, especially in front of a beautiful woman like Reva Steenkamp, you know.
Megan, well, I think this is an issue that we could talk about for hours and hours, and indeed we will continue just after 7 o'clock, especially focusing on the issue of selective memory, or what some people are calling selective memory, and how do we go about explaining the fact that Oscar can remember some things very clearly and other things not so much. Please share with us your thoughts on our Facebook page, Expresso Morning Show SABC3, and also for more in-depth analysis of the trial, follow www.sabcnews.com. We'll be right back.